The distress signal crackled through the void of space, reaching the ears of Captain Zara Vex aboard the Colonian research vessel, Star Whisper. Her 6 eyes widened as she processed the incoming transmission from the mining colony on Xerion Prime. The message was fragmented, filled with static, but the terror in the colonist's voice was unmistakable. Unknown vessels. Overwhelming force. They came from nowhere. Please, anyone listening, we need immediate assistance. Zara's delicate blue fingers trembled as she adjusted the communication array. The Colonians were a peaceful species, known throughout the galaxy for their scientific achievements and diplomatic nature. They had established mining operations on dozens of worlds, always with proper permits and environmental safeguards. War was alien to their culture, quite literally. The colony on Xerion Prime housed nearly 10,000 Colonian families, including Zara's younger sister Neela and her 3 offspring. The planet's rich deposits of quantum crystals made it one of their most valuable operations, but also made it a target for the marauding fleets that had been terrorizing the outer rim sectors. Captain, her communications officer Kral spoke with barely controlled panic. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple hostile signatures approaching Xerion Prime. The energy readings are massive. Whatever those ships are carrying, it's enough to level the entire colony. Zara's heart sank. The Colonian Defense Force was primarily composed of lightly armed patrol vessels, designed for anti-piracy operations and rescue missions. Against a full military assault, they would be helpless. Their nearest fleet was 3 days away, far too distant to provide meaningful assistance. Open a channel to the Galactic emergency frequency, Zara commanded. Broadcast on all known wavelengths. Maybe someone in the sector can respond faster than our forces. As Kral worked frantically at his console, Zara stared at the tactical display showing the dire situation. The attacking fleet consisted of at least 12 heavy cruisers bearing the distinctive marks of the Vorthon Empire, a ruthless species that had been expanding aggressively through contested space. Their technology was formidable, their tactics brutal, and their appetite for conquest seemingly limitless. The emergency broadcast went out into the cosmic dark, a desperate plea from a peaceful species facing annihilation. Zara included everything she knew: coordinates, enemy strength, civilian population count, and the urgent timeline. Anyone receiving the message would understand that this wasn't just another border skirmish. This was genocide in progress. Minutes stretched like hours as they waited for any response. The Xerion colony's communications had gone completely silent, which could only mean the worst. Zara imagined her sister's family huddled in emergency shelters while Vorthon shock troops swept through their peaceful settlements. Then, cutting through the static, came a response that made everyone on the bridge freeze in surprise. The voice was strange, speaking in accented galactic standard with an unusual rhythm and tone. It belonged to a species none of them recognized. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the UNS Defiance. We have received your distress call regarding Xerion Prime. Our fleet is currently conducting training exercises in the neighboring system. We can reach your position in approximately 6 hours. Please transmit all available tactical data. Zara's translator struggled with some of the words, particularly the species designation. Humans? She whispered, tasting the unfamiliar term. She had never heard of this race in any galactic database. Captain Chen, Zara responded quickly. We are grateful for any assistance, but I must warn you. The attacking force consists of 12 Vorthon heavy cruisers. They are extremely dangerous and well-armed. How many ships do you have? The pause that followed made Zara's stomach twist with disappointment. Surely this unknown species would realize they were outmatched and withdraw their offer. Copy that, Captain. We're bringing everything we have, 5 ships. Don't worry about the numbers game. Humans have a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. We'll handle the Vorthons. Keep your people clear of the combat zone and be ready to provide humanitarian assistance to the survivors. 5 ships against 12. The mathematics were devastating, yet something in the human captain's voice suggested supreme confidence rather than bravado. Zara found herself believing that, perhaps impossibly, help was truly coming. As the Star Whisper adjusted course toward Xerion Prime, Zara wondered what manner of beings these humans were, and whether their confidence was justified, or if she had just sent another species to their doom alongside her own people. Admiral Thane Murdoch of the Vorthon Imperial Fleet, stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bloodhammer, watching with cold satisfaction as his forces systematically dismantled the defenses of Xerion Prime. The Colonian colony had fallen faster than expected, their shield generators destroyed within the first hour, their pathetic excuse for a defense grid eliminated shortly after. "Status report," Murdoch commanded, his scarred face reflecting the glow of burning settlements on the planet's surface. "Resistance is minimal," Admiral reported his tactical officer. "The mining facilities are secure and we're currently processing civilian prisoners. Estimated quantum crystal reserves exceed our projections by 30%. This operation will fund our next 3 expansion campaigns." Murdoch nodded approvingly. The Vorthons had built their empire through calculated aggression and overwhelming force. They identified weak targets, struck hard and fast, then stripped the conquered worlds of everything valuable before moving on to the next victim. It was a proven strategy that had worked on dozens of systems. "Any response from Colonian military forces?" Murdoch asked. "Negative, sir. Their nearest fleet is still days away. We'll be long gone before they arrive. There's been some scattered emergency chatter on the galactic frequencies, but nothing that poses a threat." As if summoned by those words, the communications officer suddenly straightened at his station. "Admiral, we're receiving an incoming transmission. Unknown origin, but they're using military encryption protocols." "Put it through," Murdoch ordered, curious about which species might be foolish enough to interfere with Vorthon operations. The voice that emerged from the speakers was crisp, professional, and completely unfamiliar. "Vorthon Fleet, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Nations ship Defiance. You are engaged in illegal military action against a sovereign colony. I am ordering you to cease all hostile activities immediately. Withdraw your forces, and prepare to face consequences for war crimes committed against civilian populations." A moment of stunned silence filled the bridge before Murdoch began laughing. A harsh, grating sound that sent chills through his crew. "Did this primitive just give me orders?" "Run a scan. Find out what we're dealing with." The sensor operator worked quickly, then reported with confusion in his voice. "Sir, I'm detecting 5 vessels approaching our position. The energy signatures are unusual. I can't match them to any known galactic database." 5 ships? Murdoch's laughter grew louder. 5 against my entire fleet? He activated the response channel. "Unknown Captain, you have precisely 1 opportunity to withdraw before I add your ships to the wreckage floating around this system. I am Admiral Thane Murdoch of the Vorthon Empire, conqueror of 17 worlds. You are seriously outgunned." The response came without hesitation. "Admiral, this is your final warning. Disengage immediately or face the full military response of the United Earth Navy. We don't negotiate with war criminals." Murdoch's amusement faded into cold anger. No species had ever shown such disrespect to Vorthon authority. "Battle stations," he commanded. "Target the approaching vessels. Let's introduce these humans to the reality of galactic politics." As his fleet moved into combat formation, Murdoch studied the tactical display showing the 5 approaching ships. They were smaller than his cruisers with unusual design elements he didn't recognize. Their energy signatures were strange, not the typical fusion or antimatter drives used by most species, but something else entirely. "Time to intercept?" he asked. 17 minutes, Admiral. Should we launch fighter squadrons?" "No," Murdoch decided. "Let's see what these newcomers can do before we crush them. It's been too long since we had entertaining prey." Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the UNS Defiance, surrounded by holographic displays showing every aspect of the approaching battle. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency, each member a veteran of humanity's recent conflicts in the Sol system. "Ma'am," reported Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez from the weapons station, "all ships are reporting full readiness. Magnetic acceleration cannons are charged, missile tubes are loaded, and the new plasma lance systems are online." Chen nodded, her expression grim but determined. "Any word from the colony?" "Sporadic transmissions suggest there are still survivors in underground shelters, but surface casualties are heavy," reported the communications officer. Chen's jaw tightened. Humanity had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel and joined the galactic community, but they had quickly learned about species like the Vorthons. Earth's bloody history had taught humans hard lessons about dealing with aggressive expansionist powers. "All ships, this is Defiance Actual. Chen broadcast to her small fleet. Remember, we're not just representing Earth today. We're setting a precedent for how humanity will be viewed by the galaxy. These civilians are counting on us, and the Vorthans need to learn that there are consequences for their actions. The responses from her captains were immediate and unanimous. Roger that. Defiance. As the distance closed between the two fleets, neither side fully understood what they were about to witness. The Vorthons expected easy victory against primitive newcomers. The humans, however, were about to demonstrate why their species had clawed its way to the top of Earth's food chain, despite lacking natural weapons, armor, or exceptional physical abilities. They had something else, something that had taken them from stone tools to starships in mere millennia. They had ingenuity, determination, and an absolute refusal to back down when protecting the innocent. The first exchange of fire lit up the darkness of space like a miniature star going nova. Admiral Murdoch had expected his opening salvo to cripple at least two of the human vessels. But as the plasma bolts and particle beams reached their targets, something impossible happened. The human ships didn't try to avoid the incoming fire. They flew directly through it. Report, Murdoch barked, watching in disbelief as his most powerful weapon seemed to have no effect on the approaching vessels. Sir, our targeting systems show direct hits, but their shields are... They're not shields, Admiral. It's something else entirely. The energy is being absorbed and redirected somehow. On the UNS Defiance, Captain Chen smiled grimly as she watched the Vorthon weapons fire wash harmlessly over her ship's revolutionary deflector arrays. Human engineers had taken a different approach to defense. Instead of trying to stop incoming energy, they captured it, fed it through conversion matrices, and used it to power their own systems. Energy levels at 120% and climbing, reported her chief engineer. Those Vorthon weapons are actually making us stronger. Excellent. All ships, you are cleared to engage. Show them what human engineering looks like. The response was devastating. The human ships unleashed weapons that defied conventional understanding of space combat. Magnetic acceleration cannons fired solid projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Chunks of depleted uranium that punched through Vorthon armor like paper. Plasma lance arrays created coherent beams of stellar core temperatures that sliced through enemy hulls in seconds. Most terrifying of all were the new quantum torpedoes that didn't just explode. They temporarily destabilized matter itself. The first Vorthon cruiser to die was the Razor Claw. A single Mach round penetrated its primary reactor, causing a cascade failure that tore the ship apart from the inside. The explosion was so violent that debris peppered 3 other Vorthon vessels. Impossible, Murdoch whispered, watching his tactical display as 2 more of his ships went dark. How are they doing this? Those ships are half our size. His science officer, pale with fear, provided the answer. Admiral, preliminary analysis suggests these humans don't follow standard galactic ship design principles. Their entire approach to warfare is fundamentally different. They've prioritized speed, maneuverability, and firepower over size and crew capacity. Meanwhile, Captain Chen coordinated her fleet's attack with the precision of a conductor leading an orchestra. Each ship had a specific role, and they moved together like pack hunters stalking their prey. Rodriguez, target their command ship's engine clusters. Williams, take out their communications array. I want them isolated and immobilized. Ma'am, her tactical officer called out, the Vorthons are trying to retreat toward the planet's gravity well. Looks like they're planning to use the civilian population as human shields. Chen's expression hardened. Not happening. Martinez, plot an intercept course. Put us between their fleet and the planet. All ships pattern Delta 7. We're going to show them why you don't threaten innocents in front of humans. The human fleet suddenly broke formation, each ship accelerating on a different vector. To the Vorthons, it looked like chaos, but it was actually a carefully rehearsed maneuver designed to surround and overwhelm a larger force. The technique had been developed during Earth's colonial wars and refined through countless simulations. Admiral Murdoch found himself caught in a tactical nightmare. Every time his gunners locked onto a human ship, it seemed to vanish from their targeting systems only to reappear elsewhere with devastating firepower. The humans used the planet's gravity, asteroid fields, and even the debris from destroyed Vorthon ships as cover and weapons. Sir, we've lost 6 ships, his tactical officer reported, voice cracking with panic. The humans are using tactics we've never encountered. They're treating space like a 3-dimensional battlefield instead of following traditional engagement patterns. It was true. Most galactic species fought space battles like naval encounters. Ships arranged in lines exchanging broadsides until one side was defeated. Humans fought like fighter pilots, using every advantage of speed, surprise, and environmental factors to outmaneuver larger opponents. The UNS Defiance swooped past the Vorthan flagship, its plasma lances carving deep gouges in the Bloodhammer's hull. As it passed, Chen opened a communication channel directly to Admiral Murdoch. "Admiral, this is your last chance to surrender. Order your remaining ships to stand down immediately, or we will destroy every last one of them." Murdoch, bleeding from a head wound caused by his ship's violent shaking, stared at the human captain's image on his screen. There was no hatred in her eyes, no bloodlust, just cold professional determination. It was somehow more terrifying than Vorthan battle rage. "You're only 5 ships," he gasped. "We still outnumber you." "Admiral," Chen replied calmly, "we're humans. We don't count ships. We count problems, and you've just become problem number 1. You have 30 seconds to make your choice." Around them, the battle continued to rage, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Vorthan fleet, designed to overwhelm weaker opponents through superior numbers and firepower, was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that refused to fight by the established rules of galactic warfare. As Murdoch watched another of his cruisers succumb to human weapons, he began to understand that these newcomers represented something entirely new in the galaxy. A species that had learned warfare not from conquering primitives, but from fighting each other for millennia. They had faced extinction countless times and emerged stronger from every conflict. The countdown timer on his screen showed 15 seconds remaining. Admiral Murdoch's surrender came with 3 seconds remaining on Captain Chen's countdown. The once mighty Vorthan fleet, reduced to 4 barely functional vessels from its original 12, powered down weapons and accepted the humiliation of defeat at the hands of an unknown species. "All Vorthan vessels, this is Captain Chen. You will maintain current positions and prepare to be boarded for inspection. Any attempt to flee or reactivate weapons will result in immediate destruction." As human boarding parties secured the surrendered ships, Captain Zara Vex aboard the Star Whisper watched in stunned amazement. She had witnessed something unprecedented. In galactic history, a smaller force completely overwhelming a technologically superior enemy through tactics and technology that seemed almost magical. "Captain," her communications officer Kral reported with barely contained excitement, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet. The human landing forces have secured the mining facilities and are requesting medical assistance for the survivors." Zara's hearts nearly burst with relief. "Landing forces? When did they deploy landing forces?" "During the space battle, Captain. While their main fleet engaged the Vorthans, smaller craft slipped past the combat zone and launched a ground assault. The surviving colonists report that human soldiers appeared seemingly from nowhere, eliminated Vorthan ground troops, and established secure perimeters around all civilian shelters. The tactical display showed the impossible scope of the human operation. Not only had they defeated a superior space fleet, but they had simultaneously conducted a planetary rescue mission with surgical precision. Their soldiers had somehow identified and neutralized Vorthan positions while avoiding any civilian casualties. Captain Chen's voice crackled through the communications array. "Captain Vex, this is Defiance. We've secured the immediate area. Your people are safe, but they're going to need significant medical attention. Do you have hospital ships in the area?" "We're already en route," Zara replied, still processing everything she had witnessed. "Captain Chen, I must ask, what kind of species are humans? Your capabilities far exceed anything in our databases." A pause followed, and when Chen responded, there was something almost sad in her voice. "We're survivors, Captain. My species has a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. For most of our history, we lived on a world that was actively trying to kill us. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, climate changes, and worst of all, each other. We learned to adapt, to overcome, to never give up, because the alternative was extinction." As the Star Whisper approached Zerion Prime, Zara could see the aftermath of the battle. Vorthan ship debris floated in carefully controlled patterns. The humans had even managed their victory to minimize navigational hazards. The human vessels themselves showed remarkably little damage despite facing overwhelming odds. "How long has your species had faster-than-light travel?" Zara asked, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocols. About 18 months, Chen replied casually. We're still pretty new to this whole galactic community thing. 18 months. Zara's translator had to repeat the phrase to ensure accuracy. A species that had only achieved interstellar flight less than 2 years ago had just defeated one of the galaxy's most feared military forces. On the planet's surface, human Marines were coordinating with Colonian survivors to establish emergency medical centers. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb, commanding the ground operation, moved through the devastated mining settlement with practiced efficiency. Report. Sergeant, he called to his squad leader. Sir, we've secured all primary objectives. Vorthan ground forces numbered approximately 200. All neutralized or captured. Civilian casualties are lighter than expected thanks to their emergency shelter protocols. Estimated survivors at 8,400. Webb nodded, then knelt beside a young Colonian child who was crying beside the rubble of what had been her home. Despite the language barrier, his gentle manner and calm voice seemed to comfort her. When her mother arrived, the gratitude in her 6 eyes transcended any need for translation. Colonel, his communications specialist reported, we're getting messages from across the sector. Word about what happened here is spreading fast. Multiple species are requesting contact with Earth government. That's above my pay grade, soldier, Webb replied. Let's focus on getting these people the help they need. Back in space, Admiral Murdoch sat in his damaged command chair, staring at the tactical analysis of his defeat. His pride as a Vorthan warrior was shattered, but his analytical mind was working furiously to understand what had happened. Science Officer Kale, he called to one of his few surviving senior staff. What's your assessment of human capabilities? Kale, a slight Vorthan with a brilliant tactical mind, looked up from his damaged console. Admiral, preliminary analysis suggests humans approach warfare fundamentally differently than any species we've encountered. They don't just fight to win. They fight to ensure their enemy can never threaten anyone again. Their technology isn't necessarily superior, but it's optimized for maximum effectiveness rather than maximum intimidation. Explain. Vorthan ships are designed to project power and instill fear, large, imposing, with weapons meant to create spectacular destruction. Human ships are designed purely for combat efficiency. Every system serves a tactical purpose. They've even weaponized their defensive systems. Those deflector arrays can be reversed to project energy outward as weapons. Murdoch considered this information. And their tactics? Revolutionary, sir. They treat space as a true 3-dimensional battlefield and use environmental factors we ignore. More importantly, they coordinate ground and space operations seamlessly. While we were focused on ship-to-ship combat, they were already planning the rescue operation. The implications were staggering. If this was what humans could accomplish after 18 months of interstellar capability, what would they become given time to establish themselves in the galactic community? A new transmission interrupted his thoughts. Captain Chen's image appeared on his screen once more. Admiral, you and your surviving crew will be transferred to Colonian custody to face trial for war crimes. I want you to understand something before you go. What happened here today wasn't about human superiority. It was about standing up for people who couldn't protect themselves. The galaxy is about to change, and species like yours are going to have to decide whether they want to be part of the solution or part of the problem. As Murdoch was led away in restraints, he couldn't help but wonder whether the Vorthan Empire had just encountered its match, or something far worse, a species that might actually be better at warfare than they were. 3 weeks after the Battle of Xerion Prime, the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Station buzzed with unprecedented activity. Representatives from over 40 species had gathered for an emergency session to address the sudden appearance of humanity on the interstellar stage. The topic of discussion wasn't trade agreements or territorial disputes. It was whether this new species represented a threat to galactic stability. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the Great Chamber, humanity's first representative to the Galactic Council. She was flanked by Captain Chen and Colonel Webb, who had been specifically requested to provide testimony about the Xerion engagement. Around them, alien delegates whispered in dozens of languages, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed fear. The council speaker, an ancient Etherian named Primarch Solus, called the session to order with a resonant chime that silenced the chamber. We gathered today to address concerns raised about the species known as humanity and their recent military intervention at Xerion Prime. Ambassador Vasquez, you have been granted the opportunity to address the council. Elena stepped forward, her diplomatic training evident in her calm demeanor, despite the weight of dozens of alien gazes upon her. Honored delegates, I stand before you not as a conqueror or an invader, but as a representative of a species that believes in protecting the innocent and standing against oppression. A harsh voice interrupted from the hegemony section. Pretty words from a species that destroyed an entire Vorthan fleet in a matter of hours, declared Ambassador Thex, a reptilian being whose species had long-standing trade agreements with the Vorthans. How do we know you won't turn those weapons on peaceful worlds? Elena's response was measured but firm. Ambassador Thex, I understand your concerns. But let me ask you this. Where was the hegemony when the Vorthans were slaughtering civilians on Xerion Prime? Where was the galactic community when peaceful colonists were being murdered for their resources? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Many delegates shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to meet Elena's steady gaze. The truth was that most galactic powers had long accepted Vorthan aggression as an unavoidable reality, as long as it didn't threaten their own interests. Captain Zara Vex, who had been invited to testify, stepped forward. If I may, honored delegates, I witnessed the human response firsthand. They didn't attack the Vorthans for territorial gain or resources. They risked their lives to save people they had never met, belonging to a species they had just learned existed. In Colonian culture, we have a concept called altruistic courage, the willingness to sacrifice for strangers. I saw it demonstrated by humans with an intensity that humbled me. The Primarch Solus leaned forward in his crystalline throne. Captain Chen, your tactical report indicates that human vessels suffered minimal casualties despite being significantly outnumbered. This suggests either superior technology or advanced tactical doctrine. Which is it? Chen stepped forward, her military bearing evident. Both and neither, Primarch. Human military doctrine is based on a simple principle. Overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. We don't fight fair fights because fair fights are for sports, not war. When innocent lives are at stake, we use every advantage we can create or discover. And those advantages are, prompted the Primarch, adaptability primarily. Most galactic species seem to follow established patterns of warfare. Humans adapt to each situation. We study our enemies, exploit their weaknesses, and never fight the same battle twice. At Xerion, we faced an enemy that relied on intimidation and brute force, so we used speed and precision to neutralize their advantages. A new voice spoke up. Ambassador Kresh of the Hegemony, whose species controlled several key trade routes. What concerns us is the implications for galactic stability. If a species can achieve such military dominance after only 18 months of interstellar flight, what will happen when you've had centuries to develop? Colonel Webb, who had remained silent until now, spoke with quiet intensity. Ambassador, you're asking the wrong question. You should be asking what happens if we don't develop, if species like the Vorthans continue to prey on the weak while the strong look the other way. Humans didn't evolve to be conquerors. We evolved to be protectors. Every major advancement in human civilization has come from our desire to protect our families, our communities, our species. The chamber erupted in various forms of alien discussion. Some delegates seemed reassured by Webb's words, while others appeared more concerned than ever. Elena raised her hand for silence. Honored delegates, humanity requests formal admission to the Galactic Council with full membership status. We bring technology, resources, and a willingness to defend peaceful species against aggression. But we also bring something else, accountability. We propose the establishment of a Galactic Protection Force, with standardized response protocols for situations like Xerion Prime. The proposal sent shockwaves through the chamber. A unified military force accountable to the Council had been proposed before, but never implemented due to political complications. Primarch Solus considered this carefully. You propose to place human military assets under galactic authority? Partially, Elena clarified. The protection force would be multinational, with clear mandates and oversight. No single species would dominate it. The goal would be rapid response to protect civilian populations and maintain peace, not territorial conquest. Ambassador Thex hissed his displeasure. And who would lead this force? Whose doctrine would it follow? Captain Chen answered before Elena could respond. Whoever is most qualified for each situation. Leadership should be based on competence, not politics. At Zerion, we led because we were there and we had the capability. In the next crisis, it might be someone else. The Colonian delegate, Ambassador Nella Vex, Captain Zara's diplomatic cousin, stood to address the chamber. The Colonian Republic formally endorses the human proposal and requests immediate implementation of these protection protocols. We also nominate humanity for full council membership. They have demonstrated both the capability and the moral authority to help maintain galactic peace. As the debate continued, Elena reflected on how much had changed in just 3 weeks. Humanity had gone from unknown newcomers to a species that could reshape galactic politics. The responsibility was enormous, but she was confident in her people's ability to handle it. After all, they had been protecting each other against impossible odds for their entire evolutionary history. The real question wasn't whether humanity could handle galactic responsibility. It was whether the galaxy was ready for humanity's particular brand of protective aggression. 6 months after the Battle of Zerion Prime, the galaxy had indeed changed. The Galactic Protection Force was now operational, with integrated fleets from 17 different species patrolling the trade routes and border systems where pirates and raiders had once operated freely. Headquarters was established on Unity Station, a massive joint construction project that served as both a symbol of cooperation and a strategic command center. Captain Sarah Chen, now Admiral Chen, stood in the central command center watching real-time displays of Protection Force operations across 3 sectors. Her promotion had come with the new position of GPF Strategic Commander, a role that rotated between species every 2 years to ensure no single race dominated the organization. Admiral, reported Commander Kral, the Colonian officer who had served on Captain Zara's bridge during the Zerion crisis. We're receiving a priority alert from the Outer Rim. Long-range sensors are detecting a massive fleet approaching the Benathi system. Energy signatures match hegemony technology, but the formation size suggests a full-scale invasion force. Chen studied the tactical display with practiced eyes. The Benathi were a peaceful aquatic species known for their advanced biotechnology and complete lack of military capability. Their world was essentially defenseless against any serious military threat. Scale of the approaching force? Chen asked. Preliminary estimates indicate approximately 60 capital ships plus support vessels, the largest military deployment we've recorded since the Protection Force was established. Chen's expression hardened. The hegemony had been testing boundaries for months, probing for weaknesses in the new galactic order. They had apparently decided that the Protection Force was either unwilling or unable to respond to a full-scale assault. Alert status to all Protection Force fleets. Activate the Rapid Response Protocol. I want every available ship converging on Benathi space within 12 hours. As alarms sounded throughout Unity Station, representatives from dozens of species gathered in the emergency session chamber. The test that everyone had known would eventually come had finally arrived. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, now serving as GPF Civilian Oversight Director, addressed the assembly via hologram from Earth. Colleagues, the hegemony has apparently decided to challenge the Protection Accord directly. Our response will determine whether the accords mean anything, or if they're just empty words. The debate was swift and decisive. Even species that had initially opposed the Protection Force now voted for immediate military intervention. The hegemony's target had been carefully chosen. The Benathi were beloved throughout the galaxy for their peaceful nature and beneficial technologies. Meanwhile, Admiral Chen coordinated the largest multi-species military operation in galactic history. Human ships formed the core Rapid Response Force, but they were joined by Colonian scientific vessels equipped with advanced sensors, Zephyrian fighters known for their incredible speed, and Taurian heavy cruisers whose armor could withstand enormous punishment. Admiral, reported her human communications officer, Lieutenant Torres, were receiving transmissions from Hegemony Command. They're demanding that the Protection Force stand down and cease interference with internal hegemony affairs. Internal affairs? Chen's voice carried a dangerous edge. The Benathi system is 6 parsecs outside claimed hegemony territory. Open a channel to the Hegemony Fleet Commander. The image that appeared on the main screen showed Supreme Admiral Vashti of the Hegemony, a massive reptilian being whose species had conquered dozens of worlds through overwhelming force and intimidation tactics. "Human Admiral," Vashti's voice rumbled with barely contained aggression, "you are interfering with legitimate hegemony expansion. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Chen's response was calm and professional, but carried the weight of absolute authority. "Supreme Admiral, you are in violation of the Galactic Protection Accords, specifically the prohibition against aggressive action toward peaceful species. You have one opportunity to withdraw your forces voluntarily." Vashti's laughter was like grinding stone. "One opportunity? Admiral, you command perhaps 20 ships. I command a fleet of 60 of the most powerful vessels in the galaxy. Your protection force is an amusing experiment, but it ends today." "Supreme Admiral," Chen replied evenly, "you're making the same mistake the Vorthons made at Zerion. You're counting ships instead of capabilities. Final warning, withdraw now or be destroyed." The transmission ended and Vashti turned to his tactical officers. "Begin the attack. Destroy the protection force, then proceed with planetary occupation." What the Hegemony fleet encountered defied their every expectation. The protection force didn't engage in traditional line battle tactics. Instead, they demonstrated the integration of human strategy with alien technology that had been developing over the past 6 months. Zephyrian fighters, equipped with human-designed quantum torpedoes, struck like lightning, destroying Hegemony command ships before the enemy could establish defensive formations. Taurian heavy cruisers, using human evasion protocols, absorbed enormous amounts of punishment while positioning themselves for devastating close-range assaults. Colonian science vessels, networked with human tactical computers, provided real-time battlefield analysis that allowed the protection force to anticipate and counter every Hegemony maneuver. The battle was over in 90 minutes. The mighty Hegemony invasion fleet was either destroyed or surrendering, while the protection force had suffered minimal casualties. As rescue operations began for Hegemony survivors, Admiral Chen received a transmission that would reshape galactic politics forever. "Admiral Chen, this is Emperor Maltus of the Hegemony. I request immediate negotiations for a ceasefire and formal recognition of the Protection Accords." The most powerful military empire in the galaxy was asking for terms. Over the following months, the transformation was remarkable. Species that had relied on military intimidation for centuries suddenly found themselves adapting to a galaxy where aggression was met with overwhelming coordinated response. Trade flourished, scientific cooperation reached unprecedented levels, and for the first time in galactic history, smaller species could develop without fear of conquest. At the 1-year anniversary of the Zerion rescue, Captain Zaravek stood with Admiral Chen on Unity Station's observation deck, watching ships from dozens of species dock peacefully at the same facility. "You know," Zara mused, "when we first met, I thought humans were just another species with advanced weapons. I never imagined you would fundamentally change how galactic civilization functions." Chen smiled, watching a group of young Banathi engineers working alongside human technicians. "Zara, we didn't change the galaxy. We just showed everyone that change was possible. Turns out most species were as tired of constant warfare as we were. They just needed someone willing to do something about it. And now? Now we have something we never had before. A galaxy where being peaceful doesn't mean being helpless. Where backup really means backup, and where aggression meets unified resistance." As they watched, a new transmission arrived from Earth. More human ships were arriving, along with the first classes of the new Galactic Protection Academy, where young beings from dozens of species would learn to work together to maintain the peace their predecessors had struggled to achieve. The aliens had wanted backup. Humanity had arrived with unmatched force. But more than that, they had arrived with an unshakable conviction that the strong should protect the weak, that peace was worth fighting for, and that no species should face extinction alone. In a galaxy that had accepted predation as natural law, humans had proven that cooperation could be even more powerful than conquest.